Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Healthy Living Podcast. I am your host, Joe Grumbine, and today we have a new guest, a special person, and her name is Lisa Wooldridge. And I have known Lisa for more than 10 years, and we have shared a lot of experiences. And typically, when we introduce a new guest, we take the first episode, we just get to know the guest a little bit, and in the future we dig into a deeper topic. We'll probably do the same thing here, but we're going to open it up since Lisa and I have shared so many experiences in our life. Just welcome to the show.
Good morning, Joe. Thank you for having me.
And so we have so many things that we could talk about. I'd like to create a point of reference so people can understand a little bit about how a guest fits into not only the show, but with my life. I mean, I have lots of guests that I've never met before.
Right.
And then I have some guests that are, new into my life. And then every once in a while we dust off an oldie but a goodie. So I think that's where we're at right now. Why don't you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what brought you here today.
Okay, well, what brought me here today was a need to reconnect with Joe and Liz. Like Joe said, we've known each other for over 10 years. I met them October, November of 2013 as I was nearing the end of my cancer journey. And I was at the end of the radiation. I'd already done chemo. I had a radical double mastectomy. I'm a breast cancer survivor, a stage 3 inflammatory breast cancer survivor. And I didn't want to do drugs to get through the pain. The radiation was very painful. And so I said, well, I better go learn about cannabis. So I took some classes, some horticulture classes from Joe, and learned about cannabis and how it could help me to ease some of that pain, and just fell in love with Joe and Liz as human beings. And I've been blessed and honored to be allowed to be in their circle of friends. And they've just been very, very important to me as human beings in my life. They helped me through a tough time with my own mom, which I'm very grateful for. And I've used a lot of Joe and Liz's products, gathered a lot of healing from their information that they both have together. They are a wonderful couple together, and they're healing just in that respect alone. And I believe that a lot of the knowledge that Joe has comes from a different position because he's very holistic and he's a very intelligent man, and he puts things together in a way that some people might not. And so he does it because he looks at things outside of the box. And I oftentimes feel that I'm still here because of the knowledge that I've gotten from Joe and Liz. And they've introduced me some other really cool people too. And so I feel really grateful to still be here. And I believe you got to use all the tools in the box. You got to use some chemo if that's what you're needing. You got to use some radiation if that's what you're needing. That's not my favorite. I've used some cannabis along the way. I've used a lot of CBD along the way. I'm careful what I eat. I'm careful what I drink. And sometimes I'm not. And I do a lot of prayers. And I'm just grateful to be here. And I just came to visit my friends today, so that's why I'm here.
So it's kind of wild, and we're going to touch on a bunch of things, but hopefully in the future we can dig into deeper some of these things that we touch on. You and I have done business together. We've worked with my nonprofit together. We've done a lot of different things, and we don't always agree on everything, and it's important for people to realize that. We just shared a lot of truths in the last couple hours. And
yes,
I think that when it comes to healthy living, my vision of what this is all about, this podcast is part of it. It's creating a community. That's what Willow Springs Wellness is about.
Right.
That is, in my vision, sort of where the community can have a home base and maybe, create its own identity from that. But one of the things that we do with this virtual community of there's just the podcast alone is it's about finding truths.
Right.
It's about finding answers. And almost never are the answers the way they're presented to us. You know, if you watch TV or listen to experts or whatever, you're going to be given sets of information and given it as though they are true. And maybe they are, maybe they're not.
Right.
But you're given it as though it is. So you go to a doctor and you say, well, I've got this lump on my neck, and what should we do about it? And then you're going to a guy who you believe has the answers or could find them. And then this doctor comes and tells you, well, you're a pretty healthy guy. To have a lump this size sticking out of your neck, it's probably benign, because if it was cancer, it would be consuming you unless you were some kind of a superhero.
Right.
And I thought to myself, well, cool. That means I've got some time. Maybe I can just will it away. And clearly that didn't happen.
Right.
And so what I came to find out later, after talking to other doctors, what the hell were you thinking? Why wouldn't you go and address this? Well, I don't know anything. And so these truths, like, holy shit, I got two different doctors telling me two different things.
Right.
And since that beginning, I've been to a dozen doctors, and they've all given me different information. And since that time, I realized, wow, there isn't an answer. And so that's something that's really important when you're talking about cancer, and we're talking about that in addition to other things, but unless you know cancer, you don't know cancer. And that's really important. We have all these opinions about what we think cancer is and what causes it, what affects it, what makes it work or not work, what cures it, what doesn't, all these things. We have these opinions.
Right.
Well, remember, that's all they are.
Right.
There are not answers. There are potential answers. There are sets of possibilities. There are generally multiple ways to achieve a goal. But there are no cut and dry. And the reason why is because there are no two cancers that are the same.
Yeah, they're all different.
Every single cancer is different. So we start talking in different terms. And we start talking about terms that, you know, are talking about signaling hormones and proteins and receptors and
positive,
switches,
like HER2 negative, HER2 positive.
all these things,
right.
all these terms, these medical terms, and all of a sudden we're having to learn them to some degree and what they mean. And the truth is, they understand some things. And they've discovered that some things can do some things sometimes. And that's it. It's really not more than that. And so what I'm learning in this journey is that you're not going to find one person that has the answers.
Correct.
Unless it's you.
Yeah.
And you're the only one that's going to have a chance to find the answers for you, because what you're dealing with is not like what anybody else has ever dealt with before.
Right.
And then we start looking at things like causes and symptoms and solutions and cures and ameliorating side effects and preserving and protecting while killing at the same time. And all of these things that are just like crazy to think about. And again, there's no right answers.
Right.
There's only what happened and what was noted. You'll never know what you don't see.
Right.
Well, cancer exists without you being able to see it most of the time. And that's where things get difficult, because cancer cells, you can have mutated cells and you may not have a tumor that's formed big enough to see.
Right.
And there are, like a breast tumor, I think they said you have to have 100 million or 100 trillion cells before it can even show up.
Right.
Whereas other cancers can be detected with as little as 10,000 cells.
Yeah.
So that's this wild.
It's so different for everybody. When people think of breast cancer, they think of finding a lump. Mine was not a lump.
Right.
Mine was called inflammatory, which means it started in the lymph system.
Mm-hmm.
I never felt a bump. I never felt a lump. I just looked down one day and my nipple had turned black and inverted. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, well,
that's not good.
We got a problem. We got to do something.
Right.
And I didn't have time. I was busy. I worked 70, 80 hours a week. I was a pool store manager. I drove 95 miles a day. I did not have time for this. And I just had my store remodeled. So I go and I do the things that people do because I didn't know what to do. Like Joe says, there's all these people. What do they know? What do you know? I don't know nothing. And they told me, well, you have to go have this checked and that checked. So I went and had this checked and I had that checked. And then I got a second opinion. And they said, okay, well, now we got to do this test. And then they had to do a fish test. And then they got to do a scan. And they got to do this. And you're just standing there. And that's why you just, like Joe says, everybody's different. So you got to take all the knowledge that you can get. You do the best thing. And then like Dr. Hoffman, because I've been listening to the podcast, you do what's logical. You do what makes sense. And that's the best thing to do. Just calm down, do what makes sense, and just, cancer is scary. That's all. It always scared me. It always scared me. All my life I was afraid of it, and there it was. But I worked in a pool store.
I'm learning a lot, and I'm finding that sometimes it matters to know stuff, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the only thing that matters is what actually happens. Like people get caught up about causes of things. Right. And, the truth is they don't know. Sometimes they can connect a cause. So in my case, I have a cancer that was caused by HPV virus. And they do have some specific tests that they can determine that that's actually what caused it.
Right.
Okay. Most of the time they don't really know for sure. They can tell, well, this affected it. Right. But what's to say there was only one cause?
With me, like I smoked cigarettes when I was younger. I was around pool chemicals. I was stressed. I was very stressed. Was it all of that? Some people say, well, it's like you've got a gun, and you put the bullet in it, and then one thing that pulls the trigger, and then there it is, and there's the cancer. Did I eat too much sugar? Did I not? Did I eat too much pesticides? And you just, like Joe says, all this stuff runs through your head. Blah, 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 blah. You just kind of go nuts. And I just, all I did was I just had to save my life. So I went and I got some chemo, and I had both breasts radically removed, and then I ended up with lymphedema, which is, that's a whole nother podcast, but that's a podcast in itself.
Absolutely.
But, it just, at the end of the day, we're human beings, and we need other human beings, and we need to be able to bounce these things off of each other and communicate about them, and we need community.
One thing I'm learning is that there are some truths that we can apply. There are layers of treatments that you can do, and some things like basic, they call them pillars, but basic lifestyle choices. Things like sleep, things like diet, things like stress, things like, environmental exposures. Those are things that we know can affect health. Mm-hmm. So we know that if you don't get enough sleep, that your immune system doesn't have the ability to do what it's designed to do. And eventually oxidation and wear and tear, and you'll get sick, and that'll ultimately be the end. We know that. If you don't eat well, eventually you'll suffer from lack of nutrition, which will cascade into worse problems. Yep. And so you have these causal elements, and we're all full of them. Nobody lives a good life. We all eat lousy. We all have stress. We all have things that are potentially problematic for us. Then you have a factor that's just luck of the draw. You have your basic genes. Right. We have predispositions to things. Yep. So, I got handed, the bad heart, the possible cancer, the diabetes that my parents and grandparents gave to me. Right. And fortunately, through my environmental choices, I've not faced those things. The propensity to cancer that I have, the genetic part didn't really seem to have much to do with it. I got hit with this virus that everybody gets, and it happened to do this to me. Right. More luck of the draw than anything. However, I have lived a very stressful life. I put myself through huge stresses, unnecessarily and necessarily. I have eaten lousy for the vast majority of my life. The last 7 or 8 years, I've turned it all around, and, but sometimes it's too little, too late. Right. stress I'm very mindful of. I have stress relieving practices, and I talk about those things. Building a community, I think that's another thing. That is maybe one of the most important things, and that's what this podcast is all about. If you're listening to this for the first time, and maybe you didn't find this particularly interesting or whatever, I would encourage you to dig a little deeper, because we've been doing this for a couple of years now, and we have over 150 episodes. I've got more than 50 guests, and it's got this wide range of topics.
And you have some heavy hitters,
yeah.
too. You've got a lot of...
I have a lot of experts,
yes.
doctors and scientists and inventors, and there's a lot authors, and all of these things. This is a great group of people that are coming together to raise up consciousness. But at the same time, I seek to build a true community. It's not just a podcast where whatever people can listen to a show and make a comment and do the whole social media thing. That's cool. But I actually am building a community out of this. So through this, we have, Willow Springs Wellness, where we do retreats and work with natural medicines, and we make products, and we have people come out here for classes and sessions and all of that. That's all part of this community. This podcast is part of the community. Dr. Hoffman's weekly Zoom meeting now is part of the community. We're connecting with other like-minded groups, and I'm starting to connect with, other people that are versed about things that I'm not.
Where you don't feel alone, because being able to communicate with this makes me feel where I'm not alone.
It's huge. This is a thing that gives me an advantage that not everybody has. And I want to share my advantage with everybody. And that's part of what this is about. I realize that the show is valuable, and its success is growing, but it's not growing at a way like somebody putting marketing materials into it and pitching it, hyping it, and all that. It's growing organically and naturally, and it is growing. And so that tells me there's a true value by itself. And so my goal is to make it to where more people can know about it that need to hear it.
Right.
And I'm doing that by just continuing. It's a lighthouse beacon. We just keep putting an episode out.
You've got a lot of really good information on there, too.
I know. And I know a lot of good stuff.
You're a magnet for putting things together with people.
Well, and there's two things that we're doing. One, I'm sharing what I know. And two, I'm creating a place where people can come and talk. So...
Not only in your podcast, but also on your retreats.
Absolutely, as well. In person. We're real people.
Yeah,
we're right here in Southern California, and this is real. These conversations. Most of them happen face to face. Sometimes we do the Zoom thing because people are in different places. But the human experience is a very real and personal thing, and the broadcasting approach that many people have, it's got limited value, because each person's truth is so unique to them. So how are you going to find a real good answer? You got to sit there and you got to carve it. You got to put the time in, and you can't do that in an automated way well enough. You can do some good things, and I'm trying to sort of do both. So that's why we set up the subscriber edition, and I'm starting to wrap my head around how this is going to work. So we started doing it because I just know that there's a way that you can create levels of value, and you can create a way that people can participate and help.
Right.
So for me, I'm dealing with this fucked up situation where I've got cancer that wants to kill me. I've got answers. I have a curable cancer.
Right.
I have a cancer that is 80 to 90% curable. But the way that they want to cure it is to blast me with radiation and chemo, and then patch up the pieces and get whatever quality of life I have. And there's all these different integrative therapies that you can stack together,
right,
and reduce the effects of some of the things that are more heavy lifting. You can cause the healing to happen. You can weaken the cancer so that the treatments work better with less dose. That's a lot of what we talk about. Dr. Hoffman's group is, this methionine restricted diet and methionase. You know what I don't hear in all these people that are talking about? Hear this stuff. So I'm literally on the cutting edge of this research right now. You know why? Because I want to live, and I will live. And so I'm not ruling anything out. But I'm quickly looking at it and determining, does this have value to me? Doesn't mean, if it doesn't have value to me, doesn't mean it doesn't have value. I had to stop taking my cannabis oil that I made for me.
Right.
Because I learned it wasn't helping me the way I thought it was going to.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to do things that are counterintuitive. Sometimes.
So you're the unique person.
Yes.
You're the unique person that's saying, we can stack these different modalities. We can use these other tools. We don't have to go to slash and burn only.
Right.
One of the things that I like to say when I talk to other people is, like with me, even though I'm heavy into cannabis, I didn't start with the cannabis. I used the cannabis to make sure I didn't have to take big pharmaceuticals after my treatments. I look at chemo, I had to save my life so that I could stop and take time to learn about the cannabis and about learning about healthier food where I'm not eating pesticides and consuming vast amounts of sugar. So when I speak with other people, I say, I look at chemotherapy like Brother Bull. And Brother Bull is demo day. And he's going to go in there and he beats the place up and he just tears things and he's ripping walls out and he's getting rid of cancer cells.
Pure oxidation.
And he's just going for it and he's just all over the place.
Yeah.
And then Sister Cannabis comes in, which is not always good, but there's different types of cannabis.
Sure.
Okay, so we've got CBD, we've got THC. They're going to do different things, and maybe THC might not be the best thing for your cancer. Maybe CBD is okay. Maybe we do that later, at a later point when things are at a different stage. But you say, Sister Cannabis comes in and she says, okay, let me fold this way, let me rearrange this, make this smooth again, put everything back together. And when you take in good people in your life that care, and that helps soothe your soul, and that's going to help you relax. Maybe you go to the garden helps you calm down and relax.
Exactly.
You get into the nature of it. You can feel the vibrations in the earth, like they talk about grounding. Where can you go nowadays to get grounding?
I know.
Well, right. You can go to Willow Creek Springs. You can take your shoes off. You can walk around. You can ground yourself.
Yeah.
It's a lot cheaper than buying $200 worth of grounding sheets.
Generally.
So you relax. You come to the garden. You have some green juice. You get to talk to Joe, you get to talk to Liz. I'm talking to Joe, I'm talking to Liz. I mean, it's just, you have to do what's calming to your soul. What's soothing to your soul.
So tell me, today was a very special day because, you came to us and we hadn't talked in a while.
Correct.
And we worked some things out as human beings can.
Yes.
And I think what happens, like we live in this, compartmentalized world that is only connected on two dimensions most of the time. So people get in a huff and they get their feelings hurt and they get upset and angry and they go, well, harumph, I'm out of here. And they do that easily and then you got two choices. Either you run after, don't go, and you try to figure it out, the drama and all that, or you just say, well, okay.
Right.
I'm the okay guy. I'm like, if somebody doesn't want to be around me, that's totally cool. I do well all by myself. I will do what I do with or without you.
Right.
And I mean that to everybody. And my without being stabbed in the back a million times by a million people and having things not go right, you realize you're like, oh, okay, this is just the way it is.
Right.
But the cool thing is, and I think this is a lesson about humanity, and I think this is an important piece of the puzzle that if we remember it, it gives us hope. Hope is critical to this. So what happens a lot of times
Amen to that.
to a lot of people, and this is really important, if you're listening to this for the first time, if you've been diagnosed with cancer or some other serious ailment, and you're being told things, and they'll tell you things like you have these kinds of chances, and if we do this, then this could happen, or, and most of the time they're not all that nice about it, and they're not telling you good news. They're not saying, well, you're pretty good, you're going to be okay. They usually give you the doom report, and unfortunately for us, they do that to lower your expectations so that if things don't go well,
if they fail,
you don't blame them.
Right.
And it works. And it works for most people. It doesn't work for me because I say, fuck you. If you don't think you're going to be able to help me, then I'll go find somebody who will.
Right.
And I've learned that about doctors. When I discovered the problems with my lung condition, it took me 8 doctors to find one doctor that would find the right answer. Mm-hmm. And 7 doctors tried blasting me with x-rays and giving me drugs, and none of it worked. I'm like, well, you're not the right one. Maybe this will be. And didn't give up. I'm not going to give up. I don't have the give up switch. And when I do flip it, it's flip forever. There's no
I don't have it either.
There's no coming back. So this is maybe one of the most important lessons that you can get from this podcast is keep that hope, find that hope, get that hope.
Amen.
Find even one person that can believe in you. And if you can't find that, then find your faith. And you find...
Or come to the garden and we'll help you.
Well, yeah, you can come over here. We'll root
right?
for you.
Yeah.
But you might not be smart enough to figure that out or whatever.
You don't have to be smart enough. We just told you.
We just told you the answer, yeah.
We just gave you the answer.
But the truth is there are people that are coming together that want good for each other and want to find answers together. And I believe there's power in that. And that's what this conversation, and that's what this wellness center, and that's what these groups that we're being part of. And I think the key to that is this sort of redemptive value that humans have. We always have the ability to rise up. We've always had that within us. And no matter how bad things get, you can get burnt to the ground.
Right.
And somehow you just need that one little spark.
It's the phoenix.
And then you just come back.
Amen.
And that's so important because I think that most people, when they die from cancer, they die from giving up. And I was given the gift of understanding how you could do that through this because I have manufactured cannabis oil for 30 years.
Right.
And I've helped people with it. And I've watched what it can do for people. And it's so ironic that it's not going to do that for me, but it is what it is. And
maybe it's because you found the answers for the cannabis, some of the answers, the important answers, and now you're finding other answers as well for other people who can't use the cannabis for whatever.
Right.
Or they have to go through a period of a season, and when they get to that season, then they can have Sister Cannabis come in and do that healing.
And we're learning more as we're going. I mean, there's no, whatever we're learning, it's just about what we're experiencing.
Amen.
And so we're
and
trying...
amen means let it be.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
the translation.
Yeah, so it is. And so what I say is these conversations, this exploring, this, we're learning certain things that apply across the board. So we know certain activities, certain pillars can help you or hurt you. Mm-hmm. And it pretty much translates across the board. So your diet, how you eat, what you eat, how much you eat, when you eat and when you don't eat, all of those things will affect you and your cancer experience if you're having one. Or any disease.
Right.
It's metabolism. It's all about metabolism and how fuel is taken in, processed, distributed through the body. These are all mechanisms that are more complicated than most of us know about. We think we know some stuff. Turns out, you know some stuff, but not all you think.
You can't know everything.
And the complexities of cancer are so much so that 50 years they've been working on this, they haven't come anywhere.
Still haven't figured it out.
More people die from cancer than ever before. And they talk about things like survivability rates, and they talk about quality of life, and they come up with all these things, but nobody's got a cure.
Right.
There is not a cure. They're probably, who knows whether there's no reason for anybody to come up with one, except for somebody like me. because
Bingo.
I don't care if I make $1 million from it or not. So who knows? Maybe me and Dr. Hoffman.
I'm giving him double thumbs up right
Yeah.
now. Y'all can't see that, but I'm giving him double thumbs
There's
up.
a handful of people I'm working with this doctor, or not working with, but studying this doctor, a veterinarian out of Oregon, working with ozonated glycerin. I'm working with cutting edge therapies and technologies that people are willing to take a chance. Doctors are willing to put their license out and say, well, I know I have a license that they could take from me, but I'm going to talk about this thing that nobody's talking about because I know a thing and I need to share it. So I'm finding more and more doctors. I'm finding more and more people that are willing to step outside what they call the standard of care.
You're the magnet, and you're pulling these different modalities, these different thought processes, all of these things together, and you're looking outside that box, and you're saying, I don't have to put all this over here in one thing, this over here in another. I'm taking all of these things and I'm combining them and saying, let's try this, let's see if this works, let me look at that. How does that fit into this? What piece is that? You're literally recutting the puzzle.
Well,
That's what you're doing, Joe. You're recutting the puzzle. You're taking it, it's all here like this, and you're cutting it and you're putting it back together, and that's
well, it's kind of simple. What I'm really doing is trying to stay alive.
Amen.
And so
Yeah,
that's
okay,
really what it
amen.
comes
That's
down
it.
to. My
That's
goal
that's it.
is
That's the
to
hope.
stay alive as intact as possible, to rewind my genetic code to a place where it was more healthy and less diseased, and to set a course where I can maintain that for as long as possible. That's what I'm doing. So in doing that, selfishly, trust me, it's very selfish what I'm doing right now.
Oh, I get the selfishness.
Okay. But what I'm also doing is realizing that, okay, by doing this, I'm going to solve my problem.
Yeah,
but we
and
could.
I'm glad you are.
Well,
You're
yeah.
very clear about that.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
I'm
I'm not pretending it's anything
Yeah.
other than that.
I mean, I'm just to be clear, I'm a stage 3 cancer survivor. I was diagnosed in December of 2012, and the type of cancer that I had, inflammatory breast cancer, is the statistics that they throw at you are 75% of the people are dead in 4.75 years, and
Yep.
I'm still here.
Mhm.
And I changed a lot of things. I ate bad, I overworked, I drove, I did this, I did that, I was stressed, I'd already been exposed to this. And so I changed a lot. I changed the way I ate, I changed the way I thought, I changed a lot of patterns. I took a lot of things and brought them into my life holistically, and I let go of a lot of things. But that's a long time to be here and still be here, and I feel very blessed. I feel very lucky, and I'm just glad to be here. And I'm often sitting here sometimes going, why?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the scary part about cancer, and it is scary, but you do want to be hopeful about it. So that's the thing where you got community, right? Because community's going to make sure that you're not just sitting there in a scared little ball rolled up in the corner, because that's not going to help you, and it's certainly not going to help anybody else. So that's one of the reasons why I came over here to see Joe and Liz today, because I hadn't seen them in a long time, and they have always helped me not be in a scared little ball in the corner. So there you go.
Well, so let's polish the end of this thing just a little bit, because we're getting close to the end of the show. But you came here with a purpose, and we talked for a while, and you learned some things.
Yes.
And you've made some decisions, and you've well, here we are. We're doing a podcast.
Right.
So we've taken some action. We've already executed some things, and you became aware of some problems you didn't know about. You became aware of some possible solutions you didn't know about, and really that's what we're trying to find. And what I learned when I went through the battle with the government, that 6 years, I said, well, I can do this two ways. I can just dig in and do it myself and hope for the best and take what I take and let the cards fall where they may. Or I can try to bring everybody with me and maybe help some people with it. And what I learned with that was that by doing that, I benefited myself tremendously without that being specifically the goal.
As you lift it
And
up.
I realized that value of a community. So when I'm being locked up for being accused of selling a plant, which is what happened, they locked me up for accusing me of selling a plant.
And nobody should go to jail for a plant.
And nobody should go to jail for a plant,
that.
for any plant. I don't care what plant it is, unless it's
Exactly.
a really mean plant. And I haven't met a plant that's that mean yet.
I haven't either.
And so what I learned is that the community raised me up enough that I was able to draw on that energy enough to keep myself focused enough to make good enough decisions to keep fighting. And in the end, I was able to prevail, not because of one event, but because of dozens of events, just in a similar way that cancer comes. So you have these causal events, and then decisions are made or not. So in my case, I sat here for 9 months because the doctor said, well, you probably don't have cancer. That was a decision. I didn't do something. And I took it under good advice because he was a doctor.
Right.
And he told me what I wanted to hear. So, well, who the fuck wouldn't do that?
Okay, I would have.
Right?
I would have.
And so, he was telling me, well, we got to get this thing cut out, but you probably don't have cancer. I'm like, okay, cool. We'll put that on a back burner for a little while. I'm not vain, and as much as I don't like looking at this grapefruit sticking out of my neck, I'm like, whatever, fuck them. I don't care. I haven't stopped going out in public. I haven't stopped talking to people. You don't like me, go away. Fuck you.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so that being said, I know that this experience that we're doing here, it's already helped people. It's going to continue helping people. And I believe that it may reveal some things.
I do believe that.
Currently making some solutions that might be potentially game changers.
I think you're going to do that, Joe. I
So-
believe you're going to do some groundbreaking discoveries. That's what I believe.
Well, tell me about, though, you came here with some expectations, and I think this is important because I know you've experienced this probably for sure. When people in your life find out that you have cancer, they don't know what to do.
Right.
And they don't want to talk to you because it's
I didn't know what to
uncomfortable.
do.
I know. I get it.
I didn't want to tell people. I was almost embarrassed. I was talking to a friend about this the other day. I'm like, no, you don't get it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to tell somebody I've got cancer. I almost felt guilty, like I'd done something wrong.
Oh, no, for me, I just didn't want to hear the bullshit. And
I didn't even know there was going to be bullshit.
I knew there was going to be bullshit because people either don't want to tell you anything or they want to just tell you what they think.
Oh my God.
And what they think has nothing to do with you or anything. And, everybody's got their answers. And, you got to find answers from people that know something.
Right.
About,
but you got to listen to more. You got to listen to a lot of them. Like you said, like you're doing. You're taking the puzzles. And if we're not doing anything, we're doing that. It's take more than just one opinion. You got to get some information.
Yes.
You got to roll it around in there and do something with it.
It has become my life. It's the thing I do now. I solve my problem, and that's what we're doing. So I think it's important for people who know somebody that got cancer to fucking reach out.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
Just say, how you doing? You don't have to mention cancer.
Yeah,
Be a friend.
yeah.
Be a human being.
How you doing?
What's up? How you doing? You all right?
Yeah, you want some coffee?
Checking in on you.
What do you need?
Yeah. I'd like to come by and say hi.
You need a hug?
Right.
I need a hug.
Yeah.
I need a hug. I don't know. Do you need a hug? I need one.
These are all things
Yeah, so I came over to say hi to Joe and Liz because I needed a hug. I went through some stuff and I needed a hug, and they give the best hugs.
All right,
so
fair enough.
I was able to give some back. And it'd been a while since I'd been to the garden, and I had some things go on in my life recently, and I needed to come over and say hi to Joe and Liz. And that's why I came over. So, yeah.
So what do you think that, from your experience coming over here, how is it different from what you thought? Like you made a decision to come over here. You hadn't been over here in a while.
Yeah.
And you gave it an urgency.
I did.
And so I knew that it was something you really wanted to do. So I was like,
Yeah.
Don't have any reason to say no.
I appreciate that.
And, but I had no idea what was on your mind.
My mind was like what you just said. Mm-hmm. Literally. What's going on with my friends?
Yeah.
What's going on with Brother Joe? What's going on with Sister Liz? Mm-hmm. And I wanted to come over and reconnect, and I've gotten more out of it than I thought I was going to get out of it. I didn't come to get something. Mm-hmm. I came to give something. Mm-hmm. And in giving, I've received.
Well, look at that. Just like they said.
Right? I mean, that's amazing
Yeah.
right there. That's truly healing.
It is.
That's what the healing is.
It is.
it's spirit in the community, and we are community. We've even done some stuff. We've made some products, sold some products, been some places, fought some battles.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is. And I believe that people, well.
Well, awesome, Lisa. I think this is a good place to wrap it up. This was really great. I'm glad that you came out here. I'm glad that we've shared these things.
Thank you for letting me. Thank you.
I think that, you discovered this podcast now. Now tell me what you're thinking about, like, what's it all about? Like, there's so many podcasts out there. Everybody's got a podcast, and I'm just like, fuck, I don't want to hear about podcasts anymore.
Groundbreaking information and the way that it's presented, it's not like, oh, well, I'm just going to talk about this. Well, I'm just going to talk about this. And then you've got to try and remember all these different things. This is all of those things. It is the rainbow. It is the 4 points, the north, east, south, and west, not just headed in one direction. You're taking in all of the information to the best of your ability, and you're saying, let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. Well, why don't we look at this? Well, this one didn't work for me. Maybe it's working for you. Hey, that's not going to work for me. Maybe it's working for you. This is working for me. What do you think about that? That's what I like. You're presenting the full spectrum.
I just want to find answers.
Yeah, that's it. You're looking. That's the beauty of this podcast. You're looking.
We're building a team of people who care enough to share the things they're learning, who care enough to find real answers,
right?
To look for things logically rather than emotionally, to judge things on their merit.
With an open mind.
With an open mind, exactly. And it's sort of between both camps.
Yes.
So you have the natural camp who's like, oh, everything's natural and you don't need anything. And then you have the allopathic camp who's like, nuke them and you'll be fine. And
Western medicine and holistic medicine.
And there's a place.
There's both.
And they call it integrative. And that's what
Amen.
We're really focusing on here is an integrative approach. Even things that I thought had no value to the health equation, I'm finding, well, there's places where they could. Even things that I was certain were bulletproof, I'm finding, well, maybe that doesn't apply here. And so really being active in processing, evaluating, being discerning, checking sources. Dr. Hoffman's been instrumental. He keeps coming back to saying, well, what's the logic say here? What is in front of me and what makes sense? Does this make sense? You know what? We don't ask that question enough.
Right.
And we either will accept something that's just wild and out there, or we won't accept something because we think it's too wild or out there. And we won't just examine it and say, well, is there a place where this could make sense?
Right.
And just be honest.
Look at all of it.
All of it. And so, and understanding that none of us has all the answers. Some of us don't have any answers. Right. And it's not a good place to have a big ego. This podcast doesn't work well with egos. So if you got one, you might want to pick another show. But if you're willing to get out here and help us solve some problems, we welcome you. We encourage you to participate. And you learned a little something about the podcast today with the subscriber issues. What did you learn about that? What do you think about that?
I think that's a great idea because obviously if there's a subscriber button there, everybody deserves to be given some credit. Basically, let's just say, let's give some money on the table. Let's say, hey, this is valuable because we all listen to influencers. We all listen to YouTube. If we watch ABC or NBC, we pay Spectrum, we pay Frontier, whatever. We do all these things. People survive. They pay their bills. They keep the wolf away from the door by paying money. So let's subscribe to the podcast. That's what I've done. I'm saying I've done because I'm going to do it as soon as I'm done. I don't want to be lying. I didn't realize what was up there. So I learned to subscribe to it, that there's a hidden portion there.
Right.
That there's a benefit. And we all know about that. If you do one thing, you can walk in the door, but if you want to be the club member, then you go ahead and sign up. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to join. I'm going to do the subscriber thing because I want that extra value content. I want that extra. And when another human takes their time to gather information, time is valuable. I'm honoring.
Well, it's a different set of conversations. So with the subscriber content, I know who my subscribers are, so I'm having a more direct conversation with them.
Right.
And it's a way that you can quantifiably say, no, I care, I support you. And even if it's $3 a month, that's a real thing.
And it's less than a cup of coffee.
It's way less than a cup of coffee.
It's less than a cup of coffee.
And you could donate $23 a month if you want. I don't care. But the point is,
buy the bag of coffee.
The point is I believe I'm facing answers that I don't know how I'm going to solve. There's solutions that I don't have money to pay for right now. Right. I am looking at, okay, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to solve this? I'm looking at it from a multitude of angles, and I'm working on growing my business. I'm working on finding donors. I'm working on grants. I'm working on all kinds of ways to solve this. This is not in no way a one-trick pony. But I know that this podcast is valuable to people in a way that they say, I want to support this.
Right.
You're doing good work. So what can you do? Number one, you can subscribe to the podcast. You will get access to special episodes. Maybe the most important thing you could do is just share an episode. Talk about it. Let people know. The conversation grows exponentially when people know. Every single person that I, one by one, take into the podcast, they come back after listening to a few episodes and go, holy shit, this is great.
Yeah.
We need to grow this. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm a little busy right now.
I'm fighting, yeah.
And so, this is part of it. I process things by talking about them. So I'm like, well, if I'm going to process it, everybody can listen in. It's all good. I am not shy, and I'm not, I don't have an ego about it. I'm in the subscriber episodes, I bear myself more raw. I talk about more sensitive things. I think because sensitive things have a different kind of value, and if you just cast that out there, I think it takes some of that value away.
So it's like a public and like a private, or it's like a free puppy?
It's
Are you going to respect it as much if you give them a free puppy?
Oh, it's true. It's true.
It's not.
There's something about a membership that says,
yes,
well,
I'm honored.
And so what my goal is with this is, and it's still in development. I certainly, as anybody knows me, knows I don't have answers. I have a lot of questions, and I'm willing to try. But I'm looking for ideas of content that people want. I think this is important stuff, but I'm more than willing to go exploring other ways of doing content if it's going to cause people to find more value in the show.
Yeah.
And I think that my biggest goal is to get more people involved, to having more conversations with more people about more things,
right?
Raising up this collective body of work,
yep.
Creating opportunities for people to participate in a community, both physically, virtually, financially, in any which way that they can participate. So that's kind of what this is all about. All right, Lisa, we're running a little long now, so I am very happy that you've joined us, and I encourage anybody who's listening to this to dig a little deeper. Let's find out some more about this Willow Springs Wellness, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Awesome.
It was awesome.
All right, thank you for all your support. We'll see you next time. This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right. Well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.